This is Fantasy Football Picks and Bets presented by Prize Picks. Use code MMN when you deposit at prizepicks.com to get a match deposit of up to $100. Meaning, if you deposit $100, you will have $200 to play with on prizepicks.com. Check out the fantasy props, the overs and the unders. Coming up momentarily, Pete Overzet is going to have the DraftKings first look and research for you for the week to get started, to get your plans on the go, to go win some of that money. Plus, I do want to let you know that if you go to runthesims.com/Mayo, you'll get a discount on the DFS optimizer, the single game showdown simulator, and you can run everything, including your own custom projections, up to 10,000 times to see the distribution of floor and ceiling and where those medium projections are going to be. I highly recommend it. runthesims.com/Mayo. Enough of me. Let's get to Pete.
All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of First Look at the Week 7 DFS salaries here on DraftKings. I do this every Monday afternoon. I think you guys will probably be seeing this either later tonight or early tomorrow morning. As usual, we have all of the caveats as far as not reading into this too much. This is our first pass at the salaries. It's laying the foundation for the rest of our research this week. We still have tons of injury situations that'll shake out and potentially flip this slate on its head, but we are here to lay that foundation. I'm Peter Overzet. You can always find me on my YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/Peter Overzet. Let's get into it right now. I'm going to pull up the screen share here so we can see some of these salaries, and we can start right at quarterback. I'll also mention, as far as this slate, we are having the bye weeks hit again. It is really thinning things out. I looked at the early lines here for Vegas, and I'm only seeing two games with an over-under over 50. We have the Chiefs-Titans game with a massive total, 56.5 points. We also have the Lions-Rams game over 50.5 points there, 50.5. I should clarify. And then the other kind of interesting dynamic is we have a bunch of potential blowout games in the late slate. The Rams are 15-point favorites over Detroit. The Bucks are 13.5-point favorites over Chicago. And the Cardinals are 17-point favorites over Houston. So that's going to lead to some interesting dynamics as far as how people think about these teams. I think in general, when we see these really big point totals, a lot of times we want to play the run game and the defense. But I think there's also obviously merit to what if it does stay a little bit closer, or what if all their points come through the air early in the game. So that'll be an interesting dynamic to see how people are handling Henderson versus the Rams passing game, how they're handling James Conner and Chase Edmonds versus the pass game. And of course, Leonard Fournette, who we're going to talk about, is priced up this week versus the Bucs passing game, which actually has come down in cost. So some interesting dynamics on the slate. Let's start at quarterback here. At the top end, we have an $8,500 Kyler Murray, an $8,400 Patrick Mahomes. This Murray price tag is a little rich for me. His rushing is actually down a bit from what it was early in the season. And I do worry in such a blowout script if he's not going to have to run and throw as much as he usually would. So this will be an interesting price tag. I'm guessing it's going to be a pay up to be contrarian play, just because there are some other nice value plays where you can save a lot of money. I mean, Lamar Jackson is $1,100 less than Kyler Murray. I assume Lamar Jackson is going to be extremely popular again this week. I mean, last week we basically had the field in tournaments basically condensing fully around Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson as their preferred plays. And I honestly think we could see something very similar again this week. Patrick Mahomes in that game against the Titans with a 56.5 over under is going to be popular. But Lamar Jackson at home versus Cincinnati at 7,400. That's just such a smash spot. It means I probably won't be able to play him because he will be so popular. My GPP bro brain will not allow me to do it. I do think there are some other interesting names here. We mentioned those teams in the 4 p.m. slate with big implied team totals and big spreads. Matthew Stafford there with the Rams at 7,100, and also Tom Brady there as well at home versus Chicago. Both good quarterbacks, both pocket passers that you're going to have a lot of options to double stack with in tournaments. Those guys I think are going to be very interesting tournament plays, especially if Fournette and Darrell Henderson become the field's preferred way to play those offenses. I also think Jalen Hurts at 6,900 is going to be really interesting. He's probably going to be your arbitrage version of Lamar Jackson. People were frustrated with Jalen Hurts on that last primetime game. I know the X's and O's football bros were not happy with how he looked, but he still managed to get there from a fantasy perspective because he had 2 rushing touchdowns, which that's what he does. He scores on the ground. That's back-to-back games with 2 rushing touchdowns. So Jalen Hurts just gives you such a nice floor with his rushing production. And if he adds in some efficiency through the air, I mean, he can really reach a high ceiling. So I like him. As far as cheap guys, I think we can continue to go back to Justin Fields. He did run a little bit more. I know his points aren't up. He still only had 14 points, but getting up to those 43 rush yards is good. And you got to imagine they're going to be in a negative game script there against the Bucs. I imagine we could get some nice, Justin Fields garbage time production. I thought Taylor Heineke looked pretty good this past week in that game. He found a way to get some points at 10.28. The offense didn't really get going, but this could be a buy low spot for him at Green Bay. I think this game also has the potential to get over the total. Right now it's sitting at 49. I'm guessing by the end of the week, this total could creep up a little bit. So some garbage time Taylor Heineke as well. It's not pretty down here. It never is. Mac Jones, I thought looked decent against the Cowboys there. He got to 16 fantasy points and now he's at home versus the Jets. So that's not the worst spot. But yeah, this doesn't look like a week where we can really go down at quarterback if we're trying to find some kind of a ceiling. I think I'm going to be wanting to target the Jalen Hurts and then the Stafford and the Brady's in those games with high totals. So that's where I'm looking at quarterback. And let's tab over here to the running back position. Derrick Henry, I mean, look at this monster price tag here at 9,200. We'll have to see what he does tonight versus the Bills. Like I said, I'm recording this on Monday afternoon. I'll be very interested to see what his pass game involvement is tonight, because I think that's always the question with Derrick Henry. They're 6-point underdogs tonight. So if they get in a negative game script, how much are they using him? We saw, when they blow out teams like they did Jacksonville, I mean, he didn't even have any receiving usage because he was just getting it done so much in the ground game. But in some of these other closer games, getting very nice receiving usage. So I'll be curious to see how the trend is tonight. 9,200, it's getting very pricey, especially if he's popular. And when you see how much value we have at the running back position this week, I do think people are going to love to go studs and duds at running back. You get a cheap guy and then you pay up to get Derrick Henry because we don't have Christian McCaffrey. I mean, it is a huge gap to these next running backs. I mean, you have Aaron Jones. I mean, and we expect both McCaffrey's for sure out, and we expect Barkley to be out. So, I mean, it's basically Henry, Jones, and then we're down to $6,700 range. And this is really going to be the sweet spot here. Darrell Henderson, he is basically vacuuming up all the touches there. Sony Michel is basically not a factor. He had 21 carries, also 2 receptions. He's going to be extremely popular with the Rams as big favorites. Joe Mixon coming off a big game. I wonder if the field will be kind of scared of this matchup at Baltimore. Leonard Fournette is an interesting one. He's been getting bell cow usage. He's in a big implied team total here at home versus Chicago in a game they should win easily. He's been getting bell cow usage. So I think the price tag's justified. I'll be curious if it is too pricey for the field or if people will have no problem playing, or paying $6,400 for Leonard Fournette. Absolutely hilarious that we have Cordero Patterson here at 6,300. Cordero Patterson was very fun to play at 4,700, 4,800. I'm out at this price tag. It's too much here. He's been running extremely hot in the touchdown department. And I think there's so many good plays at running back this week that there's a big opportunity cost to paying 6,300 for Cordero Patterson. But we can continue to look in this range, which is just a really nice range. Josh Jacobs, 6,200. Chuba Hubbard, 6,100. DeAndre Swift, 6,000. Just tons of really good plays right in this range. DeAndre Swift continues to have a nice balance between his rushing production and receiving production. It just gives him a very high floor and, of course, the ceiling as well when he finds the end zone. So I like him. Antonio Gibson will have to keep an eye on his calf. He was heading into the game with a shin injury, then had a calf. This guy is basically always banged up, but I do like that game environment as far as Washington and Green Bay. So he's someone I'm going to keep an eye on. We have both of the Cardinals running backs here. I'll be curious to see how the field kind of splits their exposure there. James Conner, of course, getting a lot of the goal line work. Chase Edmonds playing more between the 20s and pass situations. Some cheap guys here that I think are completely viable. Devonta Booker is 95%. Saquon Barkley, as far as workload goes, 12 carries, 4 receptions. He's very viable at 5,500. Myles Gaskin, way too cheap here at 5,300. I know he only had 5 rush attempts. That was a weird game for the Dolphins, but he had the 6 targets 2 weeks before that against the Tampa Bay Bucks. He had 10 targets. So his rushing attempts are low, but his receiving usage has actually been really solid here. And now this is a pretty good spot at home versus Atlanta. So I like Myles Gaskin there. Khalil Herbert's price only comes up a few $100s after his big game. I mean, back-to-back weeks, 18 rushing attempts, 19 rushing attempts. This week, he adds in 3 targets to his production. As long as both David Montgomery and Damian Williams are out, I'm very content going back to Khalil Herbert. I mentioned Cordell Patterson being too expensive. Mike Davis, every week he becomes a decision point. But when you have this kind of usage, 12 to 13 carries, and you're seeing 4 to 5 targets a game, he's very viable here at 5,200. I know it's not sexy. I know it's not fun, but it is my duty to tell you that Mike Davis is an okay play this week. Wow, look at how much the Miles Sanders salary has fallen. He used to be a mid to high 6s kind of guy. Again, another guy similar to Mike Davis, where 9 to 10 rushing attempts a game, 4 to 5 targets. I think that makes him viable down here in this range, especially those targets. I think it gives him a nice floor. So some decent options down here cheap, I think, this week. I don't know if I'm going to dip below 5K too much here. Ramondre Stevenson looked good for the Patriots, but you can't really start him unless we were ever to have Damian Harris out for some reason. We're going to have to monitor what's going on with the Ravens backfield. Tyson Williams was an inactive this past week, but then Latavius Murray got hurt. Devonta Freeman came in. He rushed 9 times. So I'll be curious to see what's going on with this backfield. It's one of the more kind of fragile situations right now. I think if you tournament bros want a gal brain, Ronald Jones. I mean, if they're blowing a team out, Leonard Fournette comes off the field. I don't know. I tried to talk myself into it right there. I don't know if I actually can. The point is it's slim picking sub 5, and I don't think you really need to do it with Sanders, with Mike Davis, with Gaskin, with Booker. I should also mention Darrell Williams as well. He got priced up a little bit, but he looked really good in relief of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I like him as well. I believe my mouse just died on me here, which is going to make it very hard for me to change the screen, but we are going to try to multitask. We're going to try to keep this show on the road while I change my battery. Am I capable of changing my battery and continuing this show at the same time? We're going to move over to wide receiver this week, where we had Devontae Adams kind of burn people last week at 9,100. He is down a little bit to 8,900. We have Tyreek at 8,500. I thought we were going to get more of a Tyreek discount last week when he was banged up coming into the game. Yes, my mouse is back. I changed the batteries. I successfully multitasked. I did think we were going to get a bit of a discount on Tyreek Hill last week with the injury. That didn't happen. The field still used him, and he had a good game, 12 targets. I mean, this target share for Tyreek Hill right now is just, it's out of this world. When you combine his explosive playmaking ability with getting 12, 13 targets a game, he's just always going to be a good play. And then Cooper Kupp, I mean, just a monster year Cooper Kupp is having. I'm kind of surprised that he's still priced underneath these guys. I think you could make a legitimate case that he should be the highest priced wide receiver on the slate. I mean, look at these target shares. There's basically no variance to his workload. It's 10 plus targets a game. His lowest receiving yardage of the year is 64. He has 3 games with 2 touchdowns. Just an incredibly high floor and ceiling. I mean, his lowest game this year is 11.4 fantasy points in a game. They got blown out by the Cardinals. Otherwise, just been putting up monster totals. I assume he's going to be fairly popular again. I'm not really buying DeAndre Hopkins. His price goes up. He only had 3 targets. He just happened to turn those into 2 touchdowns last week. I'm definitely interested in going back to DJ Moore. He didn't have a huge game, but I think his workload is still very nice. We are going to have Calvin Ridley likely returning this week. I wonder if the field is kind of feeling burned by Calvin Ridley. He might fly under the radar a bit. I mentioned these Bucks receivers, Evans at 6,500, Brown at 6,300, but it's really Chris Godwin who's jumping out to me. Chris Godwin at 5,900. That seems way too cheap. We know he has, the capability to have one of these 11 target games like he did in week 5 against Miami. And we just love that spot there against the Bears at home, big implied team total. I'm guessing Godwin is going to be fairly popular this week, but as the person doing the first look, I get to pretend like I discovered the Chris Godwin play. So you heard it here first. Chris Godwin, good play this week. There also are a lot of cheap guys down in this, mid 5s range. I mean, Waddle coming off of a 2 touchdown, 13 target game at 5,600. Devonta Smith is, easily the number 1 target in that offense. Now they lose Zach Ertz as well. He had the one bad game against Tampa on primetime last week. And I think that was Thursday Night Football, only had 4 targets, but otherwise look at these target totals, 7, 6, 10, 9. So similar to Waddle, I think he's too cheap relative to his role. We have Jacoby Myers. This poor guy cannot get in the end zone. What do we have to do for Jacoby Myers? He had a touchdown get called back, but he continues to see really nice target shares. And this is a good spot against the Jets. So Jacoby Myers, is this the week? Is this the week he finds the end zone? Probably not. Kadarius Toney, I was very excited about him coming into the game last week. I think his price tag was keeping his ownership in check. He had 3 catches right out of the gate and then left the game with an ankle injury. So I'll be curious to see if Kadarius Toney is back. I continue to be impressed by him when he is on the field. T. Higgins, he was chalk this past week. His price comes down a couple $100. He still had 6 targets. I think the big T. Higgins game is coming. It is coming at some point, and I want to keep betting on T. Higgins. I want to keep betting on Tyler Boyd too, honestly, and this might be a good spot for them as well. It's always hard knowing which Bengals wide receiver to play, but now that Chase is expensive, the field wants to continue to chase, and rightfully so. I want to see who comes in lower owned between T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Those are guys I'm interested in. This early in the week, it is hard to find cheap wide receivers. There's some stuff that I think could shake out. Sammy Watkins, does he return? Because Rashad Bateman at 3,400, he came in and had a really nice target share and role in this offense right away. 6 targets there. So at 3,400, if Watkins is out, that's interesting to me. I was kind of impressed with Diami Brown as well. He missed a week because of an injury, but he came back in week 6 and had 6 targets. I was a donkey and played Adam Humphries last week because I didn't want to eat the Ricky Seals-Jones chalk. And I was wrong. If I would have just played Diami Brown, I would have taken those 6 points over Adam Humphries, 0.56 points or whatever. So Diami's interesting. I don't have a lot for you guys down here in the cheap range, though. We're going to have to keep an eye on injuries. I think stuff with Paris Campbell and T.Y. Hilton, both those guys are banged up, could open some stuff up. Chris Conley has a neck injury for the Texans, but there hasn't been much going on with the Texans wide receivers outside of Brandon Cooks. Josh Gordon, we wanted to get excited about him. He didn't have any targets or work on Sunday. So I am going to have to say TBD. Stay tuned for the cheap pump play wide receivers. Like I said, Bateman and Diami Brown would be the 2 most interesting to me right now. Let's head over to tight end. Pretty good tight end slate. We get Kelsey, we get Waller, we get Andrews, we get Pitts, we get Hawkinson. All of these guys look pretty solid to me. I like when we have all these options up here. And I think we can toss Mike Gesicki into this list. I mean, since Will Fuller has been out, his target shares have been really nice. 12 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets, 9 targets there. You really like to see that. So Mike Gesicki, I think, has graduated from that mid-tier of tight ends into this tier with Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, and TJ Hawkinson. I think that's completely fair. If we're wanting to get cheap, Ricky Seals-Jones, he was chalk at 3,000. His price only goes up to 3,700. He played every single snap for Washington. He is their new Logan Thomas. His role is really good. I'm guessing he's going to be popular once again. And I'm guessing by this time next week when I record this video, he'll be a 4,200, 4,300 player. We saw it happen with Dalton Schultz, where his, role and price tag kept ticking up. This is probably your last chance to play Ricky Seals-Jones, sub 4,000. Enjoy it while you have it. I think we should also mention Zach Ertz. He famously was not allowed to play on both Thursday and Sunday after getting traded to Arizona, but he can play this week. At home are the Cardinals versus the Texans. The Texans have been atrocious against the tight end, and Zach Ertz should slide in right away. And I think you can expect 4 to 5 targets for Zach Ertz at 3,900 in that game environment. I think is a pretty good spot for Zach Ertz. Not much else down here at tight end. I mean, Johnny Smith down to 2,800. He's only getting a couple targets a game. I'm trying to find some kind of pro cheap takes here, but I don't know if I have anything in me outside of Zach Ertz and Ricky Seals-Jones. We'll take a look at the defense. I mean, my God, the Rams up at $5,000. Can you imagine paying $5,000 for a defense? I can't imagine it. Buccaneers though at 4,000 look good. Who else do we have here? That might be nice. Dolphins at home versus Atlanta. Did they give us any gimmies this week? They've been giving us some gimmies. Lions, Texans, nah. Titans, nah. Eagles, I think at Las Vegas could be fine. I think Giants at home versus Sam Darnold could be fine. Not a whole lot here. Ravens at home versus Cincy looks pretty good to me. So yeah. Defense is defense, guys. I'm sorry. I don't have defensive takes yet. Talk to me later in the week. That's it though for our DFS first look at the week 7 salaries. If you guys want to check out how these project from a points per dollar standpoint, look at how they're popping from a simulation standpoint, you can of course check out Run the Sims. It's what I use for basically all of my DFS play. The optimal results for the simulations are massive in, identifying undervalued plays. You can head over to runthesims.com/Pete. Promo code Pete gets you 10% off any of the packages. They also have a player props tool, which is really helpful for identifying lines that might be off that you can take advantage of. So as always, thank you to Pat Mayo for having me. Thank you to you guys for watching. Good luck in your week 7 GPPs.